Let's return now to the death of Caroline Flack, and questions have been raised about the decision by the Crown Prosecution Service to pursue the television presenter over assault allegations following her death at the weekend. The 40-year-old was due to stand trial next month for assaulting her partner, despite him saying he didn't support the prosecution. I'm joined now by former Scotland Yard detective Philip Grindle. Welcome to you. It's a case that everybody has been discussing over the weekend. The implications of the role that social media might have played, the media at large might have played in her death. You represent people now in the public eye and guide them on how to navigate this world that we're now in, involving social media so much.
Yes, I think it's particularly hostile towards women. I mean, all the evidence suggests that if you're a woman and a public figure, you're going to be abused more than a man. The abuse you're going to get is going to be far more personal, quite often sexually violent, and certainly more damaging.
What advice do you give to your clients? What are the problems that present themselves to you?
Well, the general advice, I mean, not just for public figures, but for anybody who's being subjected to trolls and cyberbullying, really, is first and foremost, don't respond to it. The bottom line is that the people that are sending abusive messages, they want to get a reaction. So the first thing is, don't give them a reaction. Don't respond. Don't engage. Don't get into an argument or discussion. You're never going to win that. Secondly, don't share or forward their messages. Generally speaking, they'll have a far smaller audience than you will, and by forwarding on, you're exposing them to a greater audience. You're legitimising their argument in many ways. So so don't respond. Just try and ignore as best you can what they say. Certainly, if you feel that the messages or the communications you're getting are particularly violent or obscene or harmful, try and capture them. So take a photograph of them, screenshot them, gather them, because should it come to the point where you want to report it to the police, they're going to need evidence. And certainly when it comes to someone like Twitter, if you delete or if the person deletes their tweet, it's gone. It's not recoverable. So it certainly helps to identify the person and also to provide the evidence if you secure that by as I say, photographing it or screenshotting it. I mean, those are sort of two main things, really. But certainly, equally thinking about what you're sending. So if you do get something that you feel passionate about, think carefully before you start responding, because I think we've all been in that situation where we see something and you want to respond, but actually it's probably worth taking a breath and just not responding. But also recognise the harm that actually some of those messages can do. And the issue is that everybody has a sort of tipping point. And what we certainly saw when I was working in Parliament, and what we see now with Diffuse, is many of our clients, start suffering a mental breakdown. So one of the key services that we provide with Diffuse is that psychological support, and I think that's what we've seen, recently with Caroline Flack.
I mean, we heard from people like Kerry, a friend of hers, who feels a certain level of guilt now because she feels that she reached out to her and she wasn't able to help her sufficiently. Caroline Flack herself, in a rather poignant tweet around Christmas, said that she was advised to stay off social media, but just wanted to thank everyone for their support. I mean, is it legitimate advice to say stay off social media completely for someone who's in the public eye?
It's a really difficult one. It's a balancing act. I don't think there's any harm in somebody occasionally just taking a rest from it, particularly in those sort of circumstances where they've been subjected to abuse. But the other side of the coin is, of course, that's exactly what the trolls and the abusers want. They want to silence you. They want you off social media. They want to quieten your voice. So there is this counter-argument that by actually doing that, you're playing into their hands and they're winning. But I certainly think there are times when you seek professional help, and that help might advise you to take a pause for a period of time, either from one particular platform or social media generally.
And do you think 100% of the blame should be laid at the door of social media, in your view?
No, I don't. I think it's a quite easy target, often driven by politicians and what have you. But certainly when we were in Parliament, less than 13% of all the abuse they recorded came on social media. So it isn't the kind of panacea, and it certainly isn't the answer to everything. I think we need to be looking far wider at actually how we use the internet and whether people have legitimate access to the internet and whether they give up that right to access the internet if they misuse it or abuse it. So I don't think that social media can be held responsible for everything. I also think there's a degree of personal responsibility for those that send those sort of messages and what have you. But there also does seem to be a kind of lack of real impact on those people that do that. There's no real recompense for those that send abuse. Yes, there are not isolated cases of people who get charged and go to prison or get punished, what have you, but they're few and far between still. It's very easy just to be sacked from social media, open up a new email address, a new IP address, and you're back on again in a different name. And there's no real penalties to you, really. So I think we need to look at all that, because at the moment you can send pretty vile stuff pretty free of any impunity.
It's an area that we do need to pay attention to and perhaps have more stringent rules surrounding. Thank you very much for sharing your expertise with us. Thank you, Philip Grindle there.